too formal, so we could sort of engage. And Erin from CIS is also here, and she's going to talk a little bit more directly about the supports that an individual can have if they're in a job, and then we thought then that you can fill in a little bit what you're doing. But what I thought I would just share today is a little bit of information on the Autism Institute at Drexel University and the project that I have the privilege of directing, which is Transition Pathways. So at the Autism Institute, it's a research institute at Drexel University, and they have 3 focus areas for autism research. One is identifiable, modifiable risk factors, so things that like they could influence to help prevent autism, and then early identification, catching guys really early on because outcomes are much better. And then the third is life course outcomes. So most people, we spend the majority of our time as adults, but the research has really all been focused on the early ages, and very little research has gone into adulthood to figure out what will get better outcomes into adulthood. So under the direction of, so that's called the Life Course Outcomes Program, and Paul Shattuck and his team have been researching what sort of really will help people with autism into adulthood other than clinical intervention. So it's not really like we're trying to fix the person anymore, but like what can we do in our communities, in our world that will get better outcomes. So as part of that, we have had the opportunity to start what's called Transition Pathways. And we're really looking at starting some programs and approaches to helping youth move from high school into this next stage. We say adulthood, but really it's sort of like emerging adulthood. If you know anybody who's 20, 21, 22, 23, are they really adults? I have 3 in that age range, and like there's a long stretch in our culture anymore. It's more like 30, 35 people become adults. But you know, it's like, how do we get people through those phases so that they really can be productive parts and contributing members of our community? So I was going to ask, and we already had this conversation, I know, Ben, do you know anybody with autism? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, who do you know?
You.
Uh-huh. Welcome. Come on in.
That's a Twitter. Oh yeah, no, you're right. I have there's a I volunteer at the Salvation Army at Croc Center.
Yeah.
And I know 2 kids there that are under, and I teach soccer.
Uh-huh.
And I teach them soccer.
Oh, nice.
I know a couple.
Yeah. And Ben, you
I'm a family member
Uh-huh.
who's on the spectrum, a couple different employees, some with formal diagnosis and some.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah, my brother as well as have worked with folks on the spectrum as well.
Yeah. We were just asking if you know anybody with autism. Your cousin. So you know what? It's amazing. Everywhere we go now, almost everybody in the room has had some interaction or has some very personal connection. It really seems like there's been a sort of tipping point with that. I don't know. So, so what do you know about autism?
Spectrum.
Yes, spectrum. So we like to say, if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism, right? So it's really hard. You know, just because you know one individual, it really doesn't mean that those characteristics, traits carry over to multiple people you're going to meet. It could be very, very different because autism is a spectrum. So it's a developmental disorder, and that's a spectrum. So we'll see lots of differences and variations on it. Anything else people know or think of when you think of autism? You guys all know pretty firsthand, right? All right, very good. Yeah. So I didn't know, quite what people's background would be, so I did just put a few slides in, sort of, so you help people to understand autism. So there are some things that are sort of characteristics that, again, people may fall anywhere on the spectrum with it, but social interaction is often the area that may be a little bit different for folks. So many folks may have difficulty understanding nonverbal cues. They may have a really, if you know anyone, sometimes people have a really intense passion or focus of interest, which, you know, sometimes in schools they'll talk about that like a problem, but when you move into adulthood, that can be something to capitalize on and a strength and really an area to, as CIS, Community Integrated Services, we try to match those kinds of intense focus to job opportunities. Sometimes folks will take things very, very literally. So I said to a young man once, you're a really seasoned artist. He said, yep, I paint every season. Right? Like, so all those little things, like they may or may not really catch them. They may take what you're saying at really face value. And then sometimes there's not as much ability to reciprocate conversationally. So we watched a video recently, and it was young kids, and you know, the one kid was just like, I just want to talk about what's in my head and what I want to share, and not so much listening on the other end. And of course, we're not saying everybody displays these or in the same sort of way. So sometimes some individuals with autism do not develop spoken language. We have a young man who was in our Project Search group, one of our programs in year 1, and he came with really a few words. And the awful thing was he was leaving the school district without a device to communicate. So there's tons of technology now that, you know, really can help facilitate that. So our collaborations helped get him an iPad, and he did a great job on the floor doing sales at Barnes & Noble, and would use his iPad to let somebody know, I'll go and get you assistance, or, you know, to communicate further, and did really excelled in the workplace. So again, you know, it may be difficult to identify and express emotions at times. Echolalia is something you may, like the person repeating something that they hear. And then sometimes scripting. So saying sort of the same thing over and over in a very prescribed script is sometimes some of the things that we'll see with communication. But communication is one of the core things that really is why some delays or challenges with it, is why some people get diagnosed with autism. So this is just a little illustration. It's hard to see all these things exactly, but you know, with someone with autism, they might be thinking, when you're saying hello to them or asking them about their work, oh, what script do I have for that? Oh, you know, these lights in here are really bothering me. Or, oh, there may be lots of different things going on that might delay or impact the person responding a little bit differently than you might expect. So that's sort of, you know, just trying to illustrate that so you can sort of see. Yeah, yeah. Are you finding they sort of ring true to some of your experiences? Like which ones?
Well, I have how we got to the comments about the maglev training, sort of basis that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect sense.
Yeah, and also, you know, because many people with autism may have been, a lot of work may have been done around social interactions, they may be thinking, okay, what is it I'm supposed to do here? It may not come as naturally as, you know, we see with other folks already. Sometimes, you know, again, there's a preoccupation with specific interests. We talked about that. Routines. A lot of times people like to really know what's coming next. This is true not only of autism, but a lot of developmental disabilities, you know, predictability, and sometimes repetitive mannerisms. So if you've seen people flapping or rocking, there could be a lot of different reasons for that. It's not all one reason or the same across everybody. It could have different functions for different individuals. Have you guys seen some of these things? Yeah. And then the other really big thing that can be impacted with autism is sensory sensitivity, or just really responding to the sensory environment a little bit differently. So sometimes, like, have you ever heard of Ari Naiman? He was the head of the Autistic Self-Advocates and was appointed to the Presidential Commission. I heard him speak, and there was like stuff going on with the lights and stuff going on with the microphone. He's autistic, and he was like, no, like, you gotta chill with that on me, like you're really throwing me off up here. So you just, you know, that might disrupt any speaker, but for somebody with autism, it could really sort of dislodge them from their focus and what they might want to be doing in that moment. But again, this isn't all the same. So there might be less sensitivity for some folks and then way more for others. But these, like when we understand this, then if we see differences with people, we might, have some clue or some more empathy and understanding of where that's coming from. So this is the spectrum, and this I think is a pretty cool slide. So this is really, really important to sort of think about. So some folks with autism may have an intellectual disability, and other folks may have above average intelligence. But someone with above average intelligence might be nonverbal, or above average intelligence and have extreme sensitivity to sensory differences, right? So just because someone has way above average intelligence doesn't mean that there may not be huge challenges in other areas. And because someone has an intellectual disability, it doesn't automatically follow that there are huge challenges. So that's where we can see all sorts of various manifestations of how autism plays out in people's lives. Is that helpful, thinking about this?
Is this a standard sort of way of looking at it, or is it interpreted?
Well, I think this,
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
is it trying to make sense of the spectrum, or is it what the Autism Speaks or whatever foundation it is? Is this how they explain it?
I can't speak for how Autism Speaks explains things.
Or whatever, Autism Foundation. Or
yeah. So there's a lot of development in the autism community, right?
Yeah.
And there's even some disagreements at times.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, do you refer to someone as autistic or someone with autism? Like that's a huge debate. So for years, we would say if someone has a disability, you want to refer to the person first, not their disability. It's called person first language. So, they're a person with a developmental disability, a person with an intellectual disability.
Yeah.
But then autism came along, and a lot of people with autism were like, I don't need to be fixed, and my autism is a strength, and it's who I am. So I want to be referred to as an autistic person. It is inseparable from who I am. You're shaking your head.
I've heard both, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, the only really, different people have different opinions on that. So Autism Speaks, they have an opinion. Then there's a lot of autistic advocates who I was just reading Lydia Brown yesterday, and she was totally arguing for using identity first language. I'm autistic first. Okay, so so it's really a debate. Your default, if you want to try to be respectful to people you're interacting with, is if they have an opinion, ask them how they want to be referred to. We may not always.
And how you phrase that.
Yeah.
Important because often the answer is my first name.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Like, what are you even referring to? So that may or may not always work as well, right? So that's just language and how we think about things and how we talk about autism and how we visualize it is always evolving. And you will see lots of different representations of that. I think our point here is just trying to point out that it's a huge range, just even cognitively. Yeah. And then across that range, people may have various different sensitivities or be impacted in various ways, in these domains.
Now, is there a range that's less cognitive and more physiological, like physical? Is there any, or is it always cognitive?
Cognitive, do you mean like cognitive functioning?
Yeah, or every one of these is not really a physiological.
So you could have fairly typical intelligence, and have autism, but you could have huge social challenges or social.
But autistic folks don't have motor issues, like motor physiological.
Oh.
Depends on how I think you classify that, and I think you could make an argument too. Sensitivity to certain stimuli.
Right, one could lead to the other. Right. I just look at this. Yeah, because it looks like they're mostly related to behavioral.
It's a neurodevelopmental.
Neurodevelopment.
Yes.
Rather than
but could that play out in how you carry your body and so on? I think you certainly influence like if you're playing soccer, you might see some differences.
For sure. I do. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. So, one of the things we wanted to chat with you guys about is sort of this employment thing, right? So, 58% of folks with autism ever worked after high school. And this is compared to other people with, and so this is the full range. This is talking about people with like incredible gifts intellectually, as well as intellectual disability and everything in between, right? And what we find, and this is way under even an intellectual disability or other disabilities. And what we find into adulthood is it's the social challenges that often are one of the biggest barriers. Is that what you find in CIS?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And keeping the job, that is one of the biggest barriers. So with transition pathways, we're really trying to start programs and approaches that connect youth to employment or continuing post-secondary education or other opportunities, because about 4 in 10 were completely disconnected from both of those things after high school. So imagine if you turn 18 or 21, if you stay in school for 21, and then you're disconnected from socially all the things going on, post further education and employment. I mean, the longer you're disconnected, the harder it is. My daughter has a developmental disability. I was telling Erin she's 21 in her last year of school. She has an internship in our town in Collingswood, one afternoon a week, and she had have a snow day again today. There's a little more snow in South Jersey. She's like, I'm calling work and seeing if I can come in today. She doesn't want to stay home. She wants to be out doing something, right? And that's really typical. Like, think of the whole concept of the shared work community. I mean, suppose you didn't have that in any part of your life, work. Like, think of what would be missing. It's sort of hard to comprehend, right? Year after year after year, how much you're cut off from and how much that defines who we are as adults. So helping, that's what we're sort of here to talk about today, like building connections and building community support, really, to help young people with autism find jobs and get good jobs. And it may not be that you personally hire someone, but maybe you know of someone, or maybe you have other ideas, and we're really willing to engage with you around all of those things. So Project Search is one of our first projects at Drexel. We have 8 kids from the Philadelphia school system who come to Drexel instead of going to school in their last year because they're sick of it. And if they stay till 21, it looks the same as all of their high school years. So they come to Drexel for the whole year. They never go to the school building again. We've braided funding. The school district sends a teacher and a paraprofessional. We have vocational rehabilitation funding, and through CIS, they send a job coach and have job developers. And then the Autism Institute adds a lot of other support. But what happens is they rotate through 3 internships while they're at Drexel. So for about 20 hours a week, they report to their internship site and do work. That's real work, that's gaining transferable work skills for when they get out. And then Ben is on our Business Advisory Council, where we all work together to really brainstorm and problem solve around each individual and finding good employment for them in the community. So years ago, nobody was talking about real jobs, like competitive integrated employment is what we call it. But now that's the standard. No more do we talk about sending people to some like nice workshop or whatever, all those, you're smiling. Are you still, you said your brother has autism?
Yeah.
How old is he?
He is 22.
22. What do you want to share what he does?
I connected him with an internship with an Indy Hall member.
Cool.
And I'm from the future.
Oh, nice. Sweet. Yeah.
So it was I didn't know this. So can you explain how it is that somebody can be staying in high school until they're 21?
Oh, sure. So There's a law that's national, Individuals, IDEA, Individuals Education Disability Act. And that's from 1975, and that's what gives people with disabilities the right to an education. Prior to that, nobody cared. You didn't have a right to get into the school building even. And with that, it says that if it's an individual education team decision, but most typically, if you have significant challenges, you can stay till 21. But it's a team decision for each individual. And so it's the idea that that's that transition stage, and people need extra years to really be ramped up for moving out into employment. And that should be more the goal in those last couple of years. And in Philadelphia, you know, it's looking a lot like what the first few years were like. So that's where we came up with this collaboration. This is a national project. It started in hospitals. It's in sites all over the country and the world, and they're over 20 years old, Project Search, and we have to buy a license and follow the model. But what we've done is we've adapted the model for individuals with autism, because over the years they found that the program was started for people with an intellectual disability, and people with autism were not getting the same level of employment outcomes as those without. So our program is focusing on really trying to figure out what do folks with autism need. This is 4 guys from our first group of Project Search, and we were really, really thrilled that we secured full-time employment for these guys, for each of these interns at Philadelphia International Airport in 4 different departments. And what's really exciting with this is that after 1 year, they'll become civil servants and get the pension, the benefits, and so on. And if you know anything about the world of disability, most people pat themselves on the back, and Project Search standard for employment is 16 hours a week at minimum wage or higher. So, you know, we're really trying to like move this needle on what is real work in the community. I mean, how many of us would be satisfied? I mean, if I could live on 16 hours, I would do it, believe me, but I can't live on 16 hours, nor can most of us, right? No matter what. So really trying to move the needle on what good employment looks like for individuals. And because most people just come to the table thinking, oh, that's all we're really looking for, and if we get that, that's a huge success. Well, can't we up the expectation a little bit and at least try to aim for something a little higher? We have we have a couple other initiatives, but really quickly, we have another program at Drexel that's similar to Temple or Arcadia. So for a lot of individuals, they've been going through the school system and they've been included, if you've heard of that term. So they've been in general education classes alongside their peers. And out of that movement has come a desire for a lot of people to continue learning after 18 or 21 with their peers. And where are their peers at that age? On college campuses typically. So there's been a movement in about its 2nd decade to have inclusive post-secondary education opportunities for students with an intellectual disability. So in the first decade, there were a handful of programs nationwide. Temple was one of them in our region. College of New Jersey was one as well. But we're now in the 2nd decade of this, and there are now over 250 programs nationwide. And it's for students who would not gain access to college through typical entrance criteria. So they're not going to be meeting the SAT scores or have done all the work in high school, but they would still benefit from being amongst their peers on a college campus, auditing classes, participating in social activities, and doing career development. So we're in our first year of a program on Drexel's campus for students with autism who sort of fit in this picture. And this is our 3 students. The difference between Project Search and this program is with this program, it's all person-centered. So we do a lot of work with the young person and their family to really identify what their strengths and interests and goals are. And those and opportunities and things they participate in are matched very closely to those interests. So of our 3 youth now in this program, 1 is really interested in culinary, 1 in everything digital and gaming, and the other in computers. So we're hooking them up to clubs that relate to that, to internships that relate, etc. Where Project Search is going through internships that are general transferable work skills, not specific to their passion or interest. So we're always looking for internships with these guys. We started with 3 students in year 1. We're going to have 6 in the fall, and we're going to work up to about 12 in this program in the next couple of years. And we'll be looking for, again, with this program in the first decade, they were not so much focused on work nationwide. It was like an experience of college. And their underlying criticism were like, okay, what's the outcome? So Drexel is really focused on work for all students. So we're really trying to align this program to have strong co-ops and internships as part of it, and to really have that goal of competitive integrated employment when they finish. And it's a 2-year program. And so this is a little bit what they do. They audit classes rather than taking them for credit, and really audit 1 or 2 classes a quarter. So it's a much lighter academic schedule. And we have paid student coaches who are like who help support them on campus. And we're always looking for internships for our DAC students as well. And they could be like a co-op model. Drexel has a co-op model where you work part of the year, paid or unpaid, in something that would be aligned to their career goals. So that might be something else that, you know, members might be interested in at some point. But I'm going to turn it over to Erin, and I think she wants me to bring up a couple videos. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Erin. I'm from Community Integrated Services, and like Diane said, we do supported employment. So we partner with Drexel, and basically we'll help the students with their internships, and then the goal is paid employment for everyone, you know, when they graduate or as they're coming towards the end of the program. But aside from that, and aside from working with autism, we will literally work with anyone with any type of deaf barrier, challenge, disability, whatever you want to call it. It's such a broad term right now. Could be about anxiety, could be depression, could be a hearing aid, could be a visual impairment, could be autism, could be an intellectual disability, anything and everything. We really believe that everyone can work. Can everyone hold the same job? Probably not, but I think that rings true for people without disabilities. Everyone needs some level of support. I need my own level of support at work. My manager knows what that is. So I'm sure everybody can relate on that end. So basically what we do at CIS is, again, competitive employment, community integrated. So we do a lot of community outreach. So, you know, my role specifically is to talk to businesses and figure out what is it that you do, what do you need. If you had something in place that would make your job a little bit easier, or if you had extra resources, what would that look like for you? So that's the whole employer side, and then the other side is working with our individuals. What makes you tick? What are you really interested in? What employment goals do you have for yourself? And then we help them do everything it takes to get a job. So we make resumes with them. We have visual resumes, which I'll show you those so you can kind of see what that looks like. We've done working interviews, we've done internships, we've done anything and everything it takes to get people into jobs. So I guess before we get into this, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience then?
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 employees working for me through CIS. One you guys will know, Ellis, who's here 1 day a week. I'm trying to remember back. Not quite 2 years.
Yeah, we want 2 years.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, Alice does a bunch of data analysis for the initiative, but also about a year ago started doing outreach to coffee shops and potential sellers, trying to basically do new account sales. And all of that outreach is done online, so that meshes really well with this communication style. That's what I talked about. We have a person who started with us maybe a couple of months ago at Needham, down in our Philly place. To call that, it's a store that's not open yet. Doing packaging with some of the other employees who are there. That was working out great. What else can I talk about that's helpful?
I think what was, you know, really helpful in your case, you know, especially with Ellis, is because, you know, he's such, and I'll say this for most of our people, what we do, it's such a hugely undertapped talent pool, and he won't come out and tell you exactly what he's good at or be able to show you. But Ben was able to sit down with him and say, tell me a little bit about yourself. What would make your job easier? What would work for you? And he gets it done. But I mean, maybe not the traditional way that everybody else does, but just, having you be supportive and talk to him and figure out what works. I mean, at face value, when he had that opportunity with anybody else, maybe not. I think that rings true for a lot of what we see now. And it's really, I mean, I always say that to employers, it's such a hugely undertapped talent pool. Like, these people can work, they can do phenomenal things. They're just going to do it differently. But I mean, what a shot to go by the side if you don't even kind of give them a second glance. So it was just, helpful in that way. And again, a lot of consumers in this would be true with some search kids is maybe they won't give you this whole lot in this back and forth interview process where you're running through a script, but they can do the work. So that's what a working interview is. Like, hey, can I bring Ellis in? Can he meet you? Can we talk? Can we talk about what some of your needs are? Can he try them? Because he can show you 1,000 times better than he can tell you. But we're not looking for charity work. You don't hire someone because they have a disability. You hire someone because they can get the job done. So it really is about taking a talent and having it meet a business need. Because if it's not meeting your business need, it's not a job. And I probably shouldn't be saying this, but it's like anybody else. Sometimes situations just don't work out, and there's natural consequences for that. But we really make sure that we understand what the employer wants if we're suggesting the best person for the job. We have a lot of kind of success stories around that. So thank you for sharing it. Your whole situation with Alice was great.
Just to sort of add a little bit of more color to that, like you guys sometimes talk about job carving, which is this idea that you may have an idea of a job that you want filled, and there may not be a candidate that fits that job. But if you take a little bit of this work, a little bit of that work, a little bit of that work, and piece it together, you have a thing that actually matches the candidate. And one of the things that I noticed particularly about Alice is that, like, I know what it is I need him to do. I've finally gotten to the point where I'm really clear about, like, here's the order and do these things this way. And I don't even have to worry about it anymore. Like, if I forget that it's Tuesday at 4 o'clock and get an email from him listing everything that he's done, I might have even forgotten that he was coming in that day. And that kind of reliability is fantastic.
Yeah, we do a lot of what's called informational interviews. So we'll sit down with an employer and we'll figure out what their needs are and what their day-to-day looks like. And then from there, we may do a job proposal, which is job carving. Like, hey, from my tour of your business and what we talked about, it sounds like you could use help in these areas. And in my head, I know I have Ellis who could do A, B, and C. So I may pitch it as a job proposal and say, what do you think about this? Would this work for your business? If so, would you like to meet Ellis? And hey, do you want to give him a shot? No strings attached, and that's a working interview. So it's just many different ways to get to the other side. And that's how you get a good employee who's really going to stick, because now you know what you're getting. And then we provide job coaching, as needed, site by site. I've had sites say to me, I don't want a job coach. I prefer natural supports. So we may say, okay, do you mind if we call and chat? We just want to make sure that people are starting off strong. Or I've had, Ellis has had somebody going to work with him in the beginning, at least for pretty large chunk of time, just to make sure, and it's a reasonable accommodation. So it's covered, through us. We have our own insurance. It's no cost to the employer. It's just kind of an added support to facilitate that relationship between employee and manager and make sure they get the job done. Are there any questions kind of before we're going to show you 2 really quick visual resumes so you can get to see. It's a tool that we use. You can get to see somebody at work. So you're getting your paper resume, but you also get to see a video. Is there any questions about supported employment and what exactly it is and how it works?
How long, I'm just curious, how long until you begin working together until you find like a predictable process? In your case.
Yeah.
There's
I
always
think we spent, let me preface this by saying that at the beginning, Alice was coming in 2 or 3 days a week for like 4 hours at a time. So with that as like a baseline, I'd say it was maybe a month. We figured out, like, here are exactly the things we tasks to get done. And some of that was also me saying, like, I know the end result of what I need done here, but I actually don't know how to get this done yet. So let's try to figure all this data coming from to know where to scrape it. And yeah, and then I would say it's like maybe another 3-4 weeks to sort of up to speed. And I think that the time Kyle was his job coach, and Kyle was here pretty consistently for some number of months, but then worked with Ellis to sort of figure out when support. And then we're coming up on a cycle probably starting next week where I've got like a new batch of things I want to try. And so I know the job coach is going to be there with me talking. We'll the three of us together will talk about what it is I want done. And frankly, the two of them will then figure out how to actually do it. Which is nice.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, the job coach can come back in and out.
Yeah, they can
As
come in
new
and out.
tasks are added, where there were some social challenges or various things. It's not like at least for many of the people who support.
Yeah.
It's long-term, follow through, which is cool.
Did you have a question? You might have already covered it. So I apologize for stating it now. But like, how long are the typical jobs placements for? Are these long-term jobs? Like,
So we're always looking for. Yeah,
Or-
I mean, that's the goal. I mean, we've had people who, like anybody else, will stay in a job for a few years and leave it.
and are they leaving it to kind of then go to another job?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that is the goal, especially when you're talking about sort of people who are starting in their first job or younger. And even if they're not leaving the job, the goal is that we want longevity. We want people to stay in jobs, but we want people to grow in jobs. You know what I mean? So if you're starting entry level, like that's a good example. Ben said he's getting ready to introduce new tasks to adults. That's what we want. We want people to learn new tasks and to be able to grow. But I mean, we're not looking for short-term work. We're really getting people into jobs that they're going to keep, but more importantly, grow with.
Yeah, short for the young people who are in any of our programs, or sometimes working with some of the high schools, we're doing something called like an internship, and we're using the job coaching model and everything like that too. So those would be shorter term. Yeah, but I think for the work situations, there's so much effort that goes into it that unless there's some real specific reason why it's temporary, we did a work initiative in CIS partnering this last summer too for youth that was summer employment. So like all youth are working for the summer, and so we got kids with autism jobs like other youth for the summer. But otherwise, you're aiming for ongoing work more or less. You want to show this quickly? Sure. Yeah.
That's just an example of a visual resume. Like I said, we use many
Who made
tools.
that?
That was actually Paul, who works at Project Search. This is one of our Project Search candidates. So we've done it for all different.
You made oh, okay. Somebody made
So
it.
the coach will do it. Yeah,
coach
we'll
will
work
make
with
it,
it, yeah. And then we might use it as a selling point to an employer. It especially works well if you're dealing with an individual who may not be too verbal or isn't going to give you a lot of back and forth, but you know that they can definitely showcase the skills. Like, no, listen, I have this guy named Law. You can send it as a link or pull it up, or so that's a great tool. Working interviews is a great tool. But again, we truly believe that anyone can work. Everybody should be given the opportunity to work. Does employment look the same for everyone? No, but that's disability or not disability. So it's really our job to take talent and match it up to a business need and figure out how we can make this work. And job coaching, again, is a service we provide. People have a lot of success with it. Some employers love it, but I've also had employers say to me, we've got this. I actually would like to national supports of my office to take over, and we'll do more behind the scenes support. And that's case by case. It could be long term, it could be short term. We'll come back in. It's never like, here you go, they're yours, figure it out, you're on your own.
Do you have a database of candidates?
We do.
I can search online or.
Well, we would sit down. The way that it works, and I have some information to give you on CIS, is that we would reach out to you and sit down and really figure out, like, what is it that you do? What are you looking for? What would be an ideal candidate for you? And then we would follow up and we would kind of sit down and talk with you and then just say, this is what I understand that your needs are. Here's, like I just did it, for example, I had a conference call with Philadelphia, does all the tickets for all of the venues around Philadelphia, and we were able to kind of have a conversation, and they told me what they were looking for, what kind of skills would go into that, what's important to them, what the descriptions look like, what they could tweak, and then we were able to follow up with, hey, here's some candidates, you let me know what you think, and then our next step would be to set up an interview. It could be a working interview, it could be more of a sit-down discussion, and whatever works. So if you were interested, that's what we would do, sit down and figure out what is it that you're looking for. But it's partnering with Drexel, we have such great talent there. But even just aside from that, we work with some of the things that I've seen people do, we would have not otherwise given a shot. It's just been phenomenal. So we're just trying to spread the news more on supporting.
We have a lot of the young folks coming from our program at Drexel now who do the very detailed data entry or stuff that might drive a lot of folks. So we sit there and we give them those tasks that are somewhat repetitive at times, but they can. We have a number of guys who excel now on some of those computer tasks. Like what you said.
Yeah, if you're like, hey, we're hiring for data entry, looking for data entry, then I can look through who I have and say, here's who I have who's interested in data entry, and they've done it and they have experience, and here's their resume, take a look.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think, and then I think you get a little bit more from a sit-down conversation sometimes, and you're just looking at paper, and you can see kind of what the person is as a whole,
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you for letting us come in.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you. And you have links and stuff to share as well?
Yeah, we can share.
Cool.
Here's my card.
I have